Hello, everyone. This is Upfront, where we have quick conversations about how to build a stronger organization by connecting with your frontline team who are critical to your success, but are often hard to reach and engage. Our guests are thought leaders who share real-life experiences and insights that you can actually put to work. No fluff, just real stuff at Upfront. I'm your host, Sonia Sapaban at Trivi, an easy AI-driven messaging and feedback tool with no apps or logins required. Your frontline will love Trivi, and your leaders will thrive with real-time insights and next steps. You can find information on how to connect with us in the show notes. Now, let's get on with our show. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Stephanie Levin, Vice President of Human Resources at Corza Medical. She's joining us from North Carolina today. Welcome to Upfront, Stephanie. So great to have you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Really, really excited to talk about our frontline leaders and the challenging role they play in today's
Absolutely. That's what this podcast is all about. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself and Corza Medical.
Yeah. So a little bit about me. I've been an HR leader for a long time, and I've worked across industries. So I've been in finance, tech, healthcare. Right now, I currently serve as a global vice president at Corza Medical, where we have several business units, and I support employees across the globe. We have a diverse workforce. Many of our employees work in manufacturing facilities, and then we have some offices, and then more than several remote employees, hundreds of remote employees. So very diverse group of employees in terms of how we reach them and how we communicate with them.
Yeah, I know you have a fascinating business, so we're going to delve more into it. Given that background, especially your own vast background across various types of businesses and lots of visibility to the front line and just generally workforce issues and talent management and so on, what would you say is the biggest pain point, really, or the challenge in managing frontline work?
I mean, I think there's two. I think first, I think frontline managers actually get the least management development of any group, because there's tons of focus at the executive level, and there's often a lot of focus at that entry level. And when we promote people to management, we often give them a little bit of training, and then they're off. And they have the most critical role in the company because they're the connective tissue. They're not just messaging, they're communicating the strategy. And if they're not equipped, your strategy doesn't come into play. And so that's a real challenge, I think. Another one is our frontline leaders are operationally burdened. They have so much going on. And sometimes things like communication often feel like another thing to do. And so one of the things that I encourage my leaders is to build communication cadences in your operations. That way it's part of your cadence and your methodology, and not just another thing to do, because our frontline managers are overworked and burdened. And
Yeah, no, it's absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it's where the rubber hits the road, right?
Yeah.
and we ask so much of them, and relatively speaking, we give them so little, right, in terms of tools, and the truth is that people are different, right? I mean, some people are more introverted, some are more extroverted, some love to just talk to everybody, some are quieter, right? They prefer other means of communication or more formal. They're not so like all the time talking to everybody that they see in the hallway. So it's that consistency, right? That's right? Do you see that?
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing, I think is the importance of listening. And I've noticed that we teach people how to communicate a lot in terms of speaking, presenting. We don't always teach listening. And listening is one of the most important skills as a leader. So I'm calling that out because it's not something you typically hear as a challenge or gap for managers, but it's a really important one because we don't emphasize the need for listening, and how important it is for their success.
Oh, absolutely. You know, when you think of the reward system in a company, right? Any company. And as you know, I've shared with you, I was a frontline manufacturing engineer for a long time. But in any role that you're in, usually you reward people that are well-spoken, that will be sometimes outspoken, you know, and communicating well. But how often is it that you reward somebody for good listening, right?
Absolutely. And that's part of that's the dynamic at play. So we need to think about how we, when we see good listening, and how do we recognize that and reinforce that?
I love that. You know, that's it. You know, we've had many of these episodes now, and I think the way you put it is a very unique way. I appreciate that, Stephanie, you know, in how you're just communicating that right now. We should really, it's kind of the kind of thing that we all know, but then it's until somebody says it that way, right? It makes us think about some other solutions and strategies in the workplace. So I know that you've come up with some interesting ways to make your leadership more aware, kind of around this, you know, better manager awareness at all levels, right? Even up through your CEO. And you have this 5 things. Correctly, it's called 5 things, actually.
Yeah, it was an initiative that our CEO identified, and it was a way for him to be able to hear directly from employees at all levels. And you can email him any 5 things you think he should know, and it could be related to your job, it could be ideas, it could be, you know, recommendations on something not related to your role. But he wanted to hear from our employees, and that's a good example of listening. You know, really listening at the different levels of employees. And there were some nuggets and things that he got, and we're able to implement. And obviously, you know, I think the thing is when you ask for feedback and when you listen, you're not going to be able to act on everything, but you should respond. And so that was a lot of the initiative, listening and responding. And then we did act on a couple of the recommendations. So I thought that was pretty unique. Many CEOs are not interested in maybe getting emails from everybody across the company with ideas. And so I give our CEO a lot of credit. And I think that just speaks to his leadership style and the criticality of really understanding your people.
Oh, absolutely. You know, that's such a great initiative. And remind us, I mean, I know you have several different kinds of divisions, and you make all kinds of things. I think what I remember is the sutures that you all kinds of needles and all of this really.
We have several businesses, mostly around the wound closure space, surgical instruments for ophthalmology as well. So exciting, very exciting products that we get to make for our customers to improve patients.
All of these divisions, I mean, you have lots of employees, right? So
about 3,000 globally.
3,000 globally. So to open up and say anybody can basically, you know, email the CEO, right?
Absolutely.
That really says a lot. And how do you know, we always like to make this very real for our audience so that they can actually go and act upon it. Frankly, if I were one of those people in the audience, I would think, well, that's like a huge undertaking. And you got 3,000 people. So maybe some people are involved in helping sift through this input, right? Because like you said, you want to get back. So how do you deal with that?
I think there was, he did have somebody help him kind of go through. And we started with our, we started with a subsection of the employee group, because we have a lot of manufacturing workers, and not everyone speaks English. And so we started with our English speaking employees. Sure. And then he worked in other avenues to collect feedback from some of the employees on the manufacturing line and those that communicated in different languages.
Absolutely. That's fascinating, you know, and makes sense that you kind of started that way and then expanded. You know, tell us a little bit. I know that your business is also, you know, I mean, to me, it's just astounding how much the medical field has advanced and is advancing all the time, right? And things are smaller and smaller, things are getting, you know, and so there's probably a lot of change. And and things going on. How do you do change management? How do you, I just came from a meeting, I think I told you right before this call, about change management, and it made me think about this to kind of share that on this podcast, because
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest issues when it comes to communication, especially to get input in the first place, when you have implemented
Yeah.
that change, to get feedback. How do you do that?
Absolutely. And it's funny because this is when communication matters most, but it's when it often slips. Because leaders often are heads down in execution, and communication becomes reactive. It becomes something you have to do after the fact. So earlier I talked about building it into your business processes. That helps it not be an add-on, but it's so important to focus on change management and communication during times of change. And it's really about keeping the feedback loop open, even when you don't have all the answers. And you see sometimes people are hesitant to communicate because they don't have all the answers. Well, unfortunately, that doesn't always work, because no news is better. Some news is better than no news. And so people can handle uncertainty, but they can't handle silence. It's like when you're flying on the airplane and the airplane's delayed and the airline is not communicating with you. People get very frustrated. So that communication, those updates are really important to help people understand, and giving them space to process the emotions is also really important. That's something we've done in groups that have experienced change, really giving them space and a forum to communicate how they're feeling about the change. And then how do we work through those emotions?
Yeah, absolutely. As the adage, no news is good news, is absolutely not true, right? In some environments where people don't hear anything, they'll actually assume the worst.
Right.
You tell them, right? I mean, there's some rumors and other things that will fill in that silence when there's not leadership communication.
Correct. And I think I just said that in reverse.
No, you said it just right. I mean, it's really that, right? Is you really want to make sure that you're keeping people abreast, right? I mean, like you said about the airline is a perfect example of it, right? Where people can get really worried, or if there's turbulence, but look, on a plane, right? And then nobody says anything.
Yeah.
Usually.
Updating, explaining the why, obviously that context is absolutely critical. And, I have several examples of where we initiated a change, and maybe not everybody was on board, but they understood the why. And that is so important.
Yeah. Everybody really wants to just know why, right? They don't want to be like chickens with their heads cut off, right? So it's these are like simple things we all know, but then, like you said at the top of this conversation, right, is people get busy, right? And it's like, oh, let me go figure out, am I going to email them, or I'm going to put it on the portal, and then who goes and checks it? I mean, there's these complexities in actually doing the communication, right? The idea of the communication, I think all leaders pretty much have that. It's just when it comes to the day-to-day and how busy they are, especially on the front line, as you were saying, it gets hard. Well, so, this is, I mean, thanks for being so candid and for sharing such nuggets. But if you were going to share one thing, we always like to leave these conversations for our audience with the one thing or the one recommendation to others to help frontline workers do better and feel better about themselves and their work. What would that be?
So, two-way communication isn't a survey. It's your culture. It's what you do on a daily basis. And for that to happen, people have to trust their leader. And that is the most important thing. You will not have two-way communication, true dialogue, without trust. And so the importance of investing in those relationships with your employees and really understanding them is absolutely critical to ensure you're really hearing what's on everybody's mind.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great nugget. I really appreciate that. And I've really enjoyed this, Stephanie. Thanks again for joining me on the Upfront podcast. For our audience, if this episode has been helpful, please find us on Spotify to listen to more episodes, and now also on YouTube for watching the whole episode in video, and also share it with others. If you need help connecting with your frontline or Teslas employees, see the show notes for information on how to connect with us at Trivi, or just email us at upfront@gotrivy.com. That's upfront@gotrivy.com. Bye for now. Till the next episode.